Sometimes this gets to the point is I don't know how many products you might have. I don't know how many people are working in a division because you've got so many tools that are so disaggregated across your enterprise that it's hard to know what is true or not. And as an executive, that's very frustrating.
It's not that with a Frankenstack, we can avoid silos. And I think that's very important is if you're someone who's making these decisions in your company, you can't necessarily avoid silos, but it's making those strategic decisions.
Or because all of the developers wanted to keep Slack. They loved it. And they didn't want to go to Microsoft Teams. I get that. But
welcome to Accelerating Humans, where we talk about real people, real businesses, and the sometimes ridiculous ways we try to use tech to get things done. On today's episode, we're talking about the Frankenstack, that wild mess of tools your company has collected over the years that maybe kind of sort of work together, but mostly don't. If you've ever had 5 apps to send one message or wondered why you're paying for 3 different app subscriptions that do the same thing, this one's for you. We've all been there. You're just trying to do your job, send a message, share a file, run a report. And suddenly you've got Slack open in one tab, Teams in another, Zoom pinging you, a Google Doc floating around somewhere, and your inbox exploding. That's not productivity. That's a Frankenstack. It's what happens when companies add tech without a plan. And listen, I love a shiny new AI toy as much as anyone. But stacking tools on top of tools doesn't make your work smarter. It just makes it louder. So today, we're going to talk about how to spot a Frankenstack before it eats your team alive. What to do if you're already knee-deep in one, and the surprisingly low-tech fixes that actually work. So let's get into it.
Hi, Bert.
hi, good morning, afternoon. Not even sure I stayed up too late last night.
Good evening. So we're going to try to keep today's episode on point and brief because we both agreed that we were going to talk about Frankenstacks today. And we have both acknowledged that we could have a whole separate podcast and probably a solid 300 hours worth of talking about Frankenstacks. So for our listeners, we're going to try to make this as impactful and as short as we can. But if you want more, we can go on forever about that.
Ad nauseum.
Ad nauseum. So
yeah, I survived Stack Wars.
So how, for people who aren't familiar with our term Frankenstack, how would you describe a Frankenstack?
Okay, so this is something that is near and dear to me because multiple times in my professional career, I've wandered into situations where I've realized that I have found a squirrel's nest of various tools that have been acquired over the course of however long the company has been in existence. And they have all been acquired. They have all been maybe integrated, maybe not integrated. And then here it is 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, and they have over 100 tools that they're using. And different people and different portions of the organization use different tools for different things. Or, and this is the one that completely boggles my mind, you might have 5 tools that do the exact same thing. A great example of that is you probably have a means of doing video communication, phone communication. So you could be using Teams, you could be using Slack, you could be using Zoom, and you could use the phone and the cell phone. So it gets incredibly out of control very, very quickly. And when you scale that in mid to large size operations, it hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, very, very quickly.
Yeah, I've seen this as well a lot of times in what I do. So in my experience implementing HR systems, a lot of times the answer to the Frankenstack that these companies have said are, let's go spend hundreds, if not millions of dollars and just buy something brand new. And let's start from scratch. So I think today's episode, while that is an option and an opportunity, I really want us to talk about can you identify if you have a Frankenstack?
Sure.
And if you're not wanting to spend money to buy new tools, go through an implementation, because those are very costly, what can you as either an individual or as part of an organization do to reduce those tools, but still have everything you need at your disposal?
Yeah. And it's hard to analyze sometimes. That's the first thing you need to do. You should probably have an audit. And the easiest way I've found to do it is have an audit of yourself first. And I love shiny new tools. And a bad example of that, or a good example of a bad example, is how many different AI services I currently have and pay for.
Yeah.
I need to stop that. But I've got this thought that I've got to catch them all, or at least I've got to find the newest shiny, and it will help solve my problem that's in front of me right now. Realistically, process is more likely to solve my problems than a tool that I'm buying. And more than likely, I probably already have the tools that I need, especially if you're in a moderately mature organization. Not even a big time mature organization.
Yeah.
You probably have either the Google environment, Google Workspaces, or you probably have a Microsoft environment. That's probably something like 90% of organizations have one of the two. And if you don't, it's some sort of board help. I don't know.
So and we actually built out some steps for people to use that we're going to share in our show notes.
Sure.
Or you can go to acceleratinghumans.com and find this download, so you can also download it to have it, where it goes through the steps of what to do to reduce your Frankenstack. And so that's step one is really, what do I have? What am I using? And what am I bound to? And I love this because I remember when I was doing, a little something with AI, and I thought, oh, am I going to have to record on Zoom and get the transcript and then take that transcript and put it into an AI source to get whatever I needed? And at this time, I really wasn't utilizing Zoom in this example. And I ended up going on Zoom and saying, oh, they actually have an AI companion. How do I set this up to automatically work? How do I like the notes? How am I using this? How does this work? So that I didn't have to pay for another premium AI service. And that's really one of those very short, concise things that you can say, I now am saving myself a chat GPT annual subscription, because my company does use Google and I get Gemini. Gemini comes just with it. Or I have a Gmail account and Gemini I can use on my Gmail account. So that's step one. What else can we do to either say, hey, do we have a Frankenstack, or we recognize we have it, now let's try to pare it down?
There's that. I think Mary Kondo, the do I love it? Do I use it?
Spark joy.
Yeah, does it spark joy? And I think the same thing can apply to your technology. There's a lot of stuff that you probably have that you don't use, and it's okay to let go of it. The second thing that is really important to remember is to understand what you do have and what problems you're trying to solve. I think that that's really overlooked. Because I have an accounting degree. I'm very good at a 10 key. I can go very fast, and I've worked as a banker many years ago. So I'm very accurate with that as well. But even looking at, and I've had jobs before where part of my job was to take data from one source and put it into another using a 10 key. So I'm looking at one page and looking at another page, or it might be a piece of paper, and then I have a screen and I'm going through a spreadsheet entering data with that. The things that you have to remember is, if you are doing that, there is an error instance rate that is associated with that activity. And depending on the individual you're working with, it can be anywhere from 1% to 6% plus. So it can be very high. And depending on what your cost per error is and the type of data that you're entering, it can be very expensive. Think medical records, think medicines with pharmacies, think financial instruments. These are problems that currently exist within your organization that I bet you can call to mind a couple of examples off the top of your head.
Right. Now, when I think Frankenstack,
Sure.
and I'm sure a lot of our listeners view it as well, if they picture Frankenstein's monster from the book, how it's been portrayed, the monster having all these different parts sewn to them. I personally believe one of the things or features of a Frankenstack is when you are having systems that aren't cohesive.
Correct.
When you have, so again, that great example is having an AI feature in your meetings. That is not a Frankenstack because that is seamless and it's already integrated.
Mm-hmm.
Having to take one thing and put it into a different system when it might already be available, you may have to pay for it. So you may have to pay for it, but where it's readily available, that is what's creating a Frankenstack. So what I see in HR a lot is someone with their benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So a payroll company may offer a benefits module. And instead of saying, we're going to use the payroll company's benefit module so everyone enrolls in here because we have all their PII,
Mm-hmm.
we have their social, we have their birth date, we have their address, everything a health insurance company needs for open enrollment. We have it in here. Now we don't have to worry about opening, transferring data over and then transferring data back to know how much we're taking out of everyone's paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
It's just all in there. And now by having all these different integrations, you are creating a Frankenstack if it's not all together in one.
So yeah, the integration is critical. So how many times do you send an email when you should be using Teams?
Yeah.
When you should be using OneNote if you're a Microsoft shop?
Mm-hmm.
How many times do you have people that have emailed documents back and forth to one another when they should be using OneDrive, when they should be using Google Drive? That you should be using tools that allow you to collapse work into places where it doesn't require rework. And it's completely, I mean, I've seen studies where 25% of your time is taken up with that sort of thing. It's
Wow.
incredible the amount of effort that goes into it. Plus it introduces errors. It's simple to go and just, if nothing else, what am I using? And then what is available to me? And if it's available to me, how can I move that availability into my actual workflow and get value for it?
Right.
If you don't know how to do it, we can help. It's just a question of like asking the right questions, I think.
Now, what would be like the next step? So now that you said, these are the tools I have. This is how they're working. This is the purpose of them. This is what's actually available to me on some of my bigger tools that I can replace. So now that you've done that, what can be next?
So here's where people get involved. And whenever you deal with people, it gets messy. You need to have some sort of organizational buy-in. And for me, at least, I'm going to go talk to, I'm coming from IT, saying this is what you're going to use. And I send out the memo and I said, I'm going to sunset all of your tools on this date. Everybody gets mad at me, but then I do it and it's fine. However, you probably shouldn't do that if you're not in that particular space. What I would say instead is talk to your teams, figure out what actually works best for you. There's probably a reason that the tools that you have been chosen. If you are a Microsoft shop, try to move as close to Microsoft as you can because it allows you to gain efficiencies. If you're a Google shop, try to move as close to the Google as you can because it allows you to gain efficiencies. If you want to go outside of a tool that they already have to duplicate a tool, have a good use case for it and a good reason, and then see if you can have some sort of automation hook to pull the data from whatever tool you're using into your existing workflows. The really powerful benefit of that is that it decreases that repetition of effort where I'm out manually keying stuff, decreases your error rate. And I don't know about you, but when I realized that I could have transcripts of all of my meetings and I didn't have to have a junior analyst taking notes, that was awesome.
Yeah. Well, there's also this idea of the data path that I love. And I remember I was doing this huge implementation and we had some BAs, and I said to this one BA, here's a list of about 70 critical data points for HR.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to create a matrix and say who's the initial person to enter this into the system, who has access to change it, when it can be, where it can be changed. So we'll talk about address.
Sure.
So the address is entered by the employee at onboarding, and then the employee can change it at any time. And the HRBP is the only one who has access to change the address at that time. And having this huge matrix of where does it show up in the stage, who can view it, who can edit it, because if something is wrong and something there's a lapse in data, we need to see who can manually do it.
Yeah.
Now, social security number, if it's only entered in once and there's only one or two people within the organization who actually have the ability to change that or even view it, wow, we're then saying downstream into your benefit system, the social security is wrong. Well, it's either the employee gave it to us or someone changed it. And I think that I love having the automation of things and having the business case that says, you know what, if we have dirty data, yeah, it might be dirty in all these other systems, but hey, to fix it, we only have to clean one area and then it flows on over.
Well, it's a nightmare to try to go back and identify. So if I've got the initial input is all, I can often go back and clean that because it was a bulk operation. If it is some sort of operation where I've got multiple time series where things have been entered and removed, and some is right and some is wrong, it's much, much more difficult for me to de-aggregate what's been aggregated.
Yeah. And right. So bringing this all back into this Frankenstack idea.
Sure.
We're not saying that having multiple systems are bad or having multiple tech tools, like you have to have it all in one. But if you're able to have a feature that uses everything all in one, or you're able to build the integrations in so that you're cutting out a lot of duplicate work and a lot of login work, then you're going to have a much smoother time in your work, and you're going to cut down on compliance, and you're going to cut down on the manual labor, and it's going to be just enjoyable all around.
Well,
it was enjoyable. That was work.
Okay. So during the I think the Bureau of Labor and Statistics during COVID said that something like 26% of people wanted to leave their jobs based on the frustrations associated with this sort of, crap work that people had to do. And as we get involved in more automation, this gives us the opportunity to move past really painful, horrible portions of data work. And I don't think we have to live in that anymore. We don't have to wallow in it anymore. It just is a question of, are we willing to do the initial work, the effort that's necessary to get us from where we're at to something that's more useful, is more productive. And again, that starts with something as simple as understanding what you do have. And it can be, well, I have everything I need, or I don't. And if you don't, you do a gap analysis, you find the tool, and then go from there.
So not only are we going to have in our show notes and downloading the steps of what to do to audit, but we also have two additional things that I want to talk through when it comes to your Frankenstack. The first being a Frankenstack, we call it the Frankenstack.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's your tech stack problem matrix. So Bert, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
The problem matrix, the things I'm looking for is, do I have any cross-ecosystem document flow? So do I have stuff that's going from Google to Microsoft Word or to Slack, and it's not living in the right spots? That's a really important one.
And again, these are the things that you and I do when we go into an organization and we're brought in for tech assistance. We essentially go through this matrix and we say, is it working? Here's what we're looking for as big red flags of, hey, this may be a pinpoint, it's not working. And this is, oh, we need to change this now.
It could be a data security thing. And it's just a question of what sort of data are you handling? How is it being handled? Who has access to it? Is it staying within the organization? Is it on secure or non-secure channels? Are you encrypting it end to end? These are things that you should be paying attention to. Nobody likes to have those conversations, but there's a reason why we choose the tools that we do in IT. So if I've got you on one tool, it's probably because I believe that I can secure it for your use cases.
Right.
And I mean, again, it's going back to HR. HR is one of those kind of odd fish, if you would, within an organization that they often have a silo built around them on purpose because they hold that personally identifiable information that's really important to people. So they have my social security number. They have, they have information that is non-public, even if it's internal to the organization. So the question really is, are there other data silos within the organization that exist without reason? The ones that I see pop up the most are IT always has a silo because they do with stuff that nobody really understands, especially if there's software development involved.
Right.
HR always has a silo because of the information that they have. I often see a silo around finance because, again, they're working with tools that others might not. A lot of times marketing has their own tools, and it just really depends on and then of course sales, because you start bringing Salesforce in and Lord help you.
Well, and again, it's not that we're with a Frankenstack, we can avoid silos. And I think that's very important, is if you're someone who's making these decisions in your company, you can't necessarily avoid silos, but it's making those strategic decisions to say, you are a marketing team, you need Adobe Illustrate. I think that you need Adobe Illustrate to do some of your graphics. You need your graphic design software. We get that. No one else is going to have that. We understand that's a silo. However, when you save your graphics, where is that being saved? Is it folders within Adobe? Or are we now taking this and putting it in a common place so that when a department needs to create something additionally, they can then pull it down?
And this kind of documentation. So if your organization has a common strategy for documentation and for sharing files, it makes it a lot easier to find stuff.
Yeah. And when you figure out if you are siloed, I think one of the most important things to ask is if the tools are in the same functional category. So one of our Frankenstack red flags that you'll see on the problem matrix is this tool in the same functional category? So the last thing you'll be able to find in today's show notes and on our website for today's episode is a list that Bert brilliantly put together of all the different types of categories of software, or the ones that you're really going to find in your business, and how they're broken down into those different categories. So if you have Microsoft Teams, do you also have Slack?
Yep.
Is that great example? If you have Asana as your project planning, are you using Monday.com? What are you using? And if you have multiples of these being used, the question really needs to be asked why, and that's one of the places to start. So again, you can't avoid silos, but it's making sure they're not duplicated. And when we do have silos, coming from my HR background, when we do have employee information being put into your payroll HR system, can we integrate that to go into something like an Active Directory, which then IT is able to pull that information down, or usernames and logins are automatically generated?
Yes. And that's critical, because I can't tell you, I mean, again, not a huge organization, 2,500 people, and we had hundreds of duplicate names. And especially we had an offshore operation with about 400 people sitting in India, and just just making sure that we normalize the ways that the names were used across two different HR systems, one stateside and one, offshore.
Absolutely.
It's a mess. Because again, what is your ultimate source of truth, and which record is the one that we're actually referring to? Sometimes this gets to the point is, I don't know how many products you might have. I don't know how many people are working in a division, because you've got so many tools that are so disaggregated across your enterprise that it's hard to know what is true or not. And as an executive, that's very frustrating.
Absolutely. And there's always going to be a level of having to understand what each one does. So as an executive, I know an executive might say, we're trying to save money. And I had an executive director whose big thing was save money wherever we can, and wanted to go through and slash things. But you have to understand what each one of them does.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with groups that they were recruiting companies and they wanted to use applicant tracking systems that their payroll company provided. And I screamed at the top of my lungs, absolutely not. You need specialty bells and whistles.
Yeah.
I've had a hospital group that wanted to do certain information in a payroll system. And I said, absolutely not. The permissions and controls aren't as high level as your ERMs. ERMs, as their electronic
medical records,
medical records, EMRs. And that for me, there are going to be the cases where you have to, and it's really important, as if you're an executive listening to this, understand that sometimes you do need those tools, but it's always going to be let's look and see if we have something else in our tool stack that replaces this and does the job just as well, if not better.
And does it bring me joy might not be reasonable, but does it bring me EBITDA might be more reasonable.
Yeah, it doesn't bring me EBITDA. The last thing I will say on this is what I found a core cause or a core reason why companies have Frankenstacks is they bring in the decision makers. So they bring in the IT people, they bring in the directors of HR, they bring in new CFOs, and they like their systems and they push to get those systems in. So that really also needs to be something else that you keep in mind, is saying, why do we have something? A lot of times the answer is because it sparks me joy.
Well, yeah.
I like using ChatGPT over Gemini, so we're going to use ChatGPT and pay for that.
We had a low-level war because all of the developers wanted to keep Slack. They loved it. And they didn't want to go to Microsoft Teams. I get that. But there's, again, at a certain point, what is it costing the organization? What's best for the organization? And this is so applicable because it's not just for-profit businesses. This is government, public sector. We're talking education.
This is solopreneur.
Everybody.
I think this is really applicable to the solopreneurs or the really small businesses who maybe they have 5 employees or under. They want to start using more technology tools. They want to get into the AI game. They are making things like their own graphics. They're doing accounting and billing on their own. And the question really becomes, look at your tools, look at your platforms, and see what is available before you go and spend. And the great news is we are in a time where every piece of technology, they're trying to fight for your business. So they are developing quickly, and they are including things that you may not even think are part of what they're packaging.
You probably already have what you need. I promise you.
So are you going to go home and maybe clean house?
Oh,
and
man.
Just get rid of one?
I just bought a new one.
Get rid of, okay. Buy one, get rid of one.
I don't like it.
No, it's a business expense for research purposes. Join us next time as Bert reviews every single AI tool he has.
It's too many. Yep.
All right, Bert, I think we kept our promise. We kept it pretty concise, pretty impactful.
I think it's good. Thank you, Julianna.
yeah, everyone go to acceleratinghumans.com to check out those downloads to identify your Frankenstacks and eliminate some of the waste.
See you next time.
All right, bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Accelerating Humans. If you would like to take our archetypes test, you can find that on our website, www.acceleratinghumans.com. If you'd like to reach out to myself or to Bert, you can email us at bert@acceleratinghumans.com or Julianna@acceleratinghumans.com. If you have any interest on being on the show, you can also reach us at those same emails.